Matthew Horace joins us live.
CNN law enforcement analyst Matthew Horace.
Horace is a former federal agent of 25 years. He also has national and international security experience.
CNN law enforcement analyst and author Matthew Horace joins me now. Matthew, thank you so much for being with me. This book, The Call, it actually is an acronym. It stands for character, accountability, love, and leadership.
Law enforcement has to respond, and we have to respond vigorously.
Matthew Horace is a former ATF special agent.
They're going to try to determine where the call came from, and if they can do that, they're going to send people out to knock on doors, shake trees, until they locate an individual.
Well, let's face it, all last week, the world is wondering what could have inspired someone to do this.
In this case, they've already declared that it's not an arson, so that helps us to be able to move on and sort of gather the facts and validate that fact. Absolutely, Wolf. I've seen fingerprints drawn from firearms, currency, plastic bag, cups. They can retrieve fingerprints and DNA off of almost anything that has the right surface. The United States Marshals, the FBI, the New York State Police are on the job, and little by little they're going to follow leads. There's a reward on the street, $100,000. Whenever you put money on the street, people give answers.
That term that I've coined, coptics, the optics of policing in the digital age. We all have to get on board with this 24-hour news cycle where everyone is armed with a camera.
There's no timing on transparency. So whether we release the information today or release the information 2 weeks from now, it doesn't change the facts.
He stopped the threat. The suspect is not dead. The threat was mitigated, and we're going to move on.
Too little, too late. Somebody needs to speak up. If you see something, say something.
This whole digital divide has created a broader chasm because universally, we haven't gotten used to the idea that we are behind the story and not ahead of the story.
I've arrested hundreds of people. We've done this hundreds of times. If it's a safe situation to do it, you make that decision.
This condition I described as coptics is the combination of the optics of policing in the digital age and the convergence of video and technology.
Let's break it down by the numbers. We are taught and culturalized that when we see small things like traffic infractions, broken tail lights, expired registrations, or things like that, we're taught that those bits of probable cause and reasonable suspicion may in fact lead to other things.
We have a tremendous amount of resources within the scope of the federal government. We've been there before, and we understand that arson and explosive investigations are very complex.
At the end of the day, with everything that we have going on in the country right now, any African-American man who looks in the rearview mirror is going to get nervous when they get stopped by the police.
What is the cause and origin of the fire? If investigators determine that it's arson, then they're going to go back to try to figure out what the motive was and who caused that arson. If not, it goes back to the owners. Someone dropped the ball on this as it relates to code enforcement. The police chief has already said a gun was found on the suspect and no book was found. So we know that. But this is after the fact, after the protest. We want to find out who's responsible and do it with a quickness.
I've been stopped as an African-American man, as a police officer, and at different times officers have had their hands on their guns. And I've even been stopped when officers had their guns out. I've made traffic stops where my hand was on my gun or my gun was out. It all depends on the frame of mind of the officer, how he or she evaluates the stop, and what threats may be present.
But in this situation, do you see anything that warrants this person being shot?
100% not. There are 4 officers there. There was no weapons. There was no action. I don't know why these 4 officers couldn't put hands on this individual and gain control of it.
Really appreciate your insight, Matthew Horace. You give us great perspective on a broad spectrum, as you pointed out. Nice to see you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Matthew Horace, thanks so much for all the information.